Welcome back. Our guest this week is Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm, and we talked about the on the budget cuts here. Now, what role are the troops playing in the House as far as the House Democrats? And I know House Speaker Andy Dillon has been at the center of this whole discussion.
Well, let's just say that the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader had an agreement about doing an all-cuts budget first, and then going back and getting revenues. I didn't like that strategy because I thought you lose leverage if you agree to all cuts. What's going to bring the Senate back? And in fact, that's exactly what has happened.
Shouldn't the Speaker be in line with you?
Oh, he is now. I mean, he wants to see us protect public education, health care, public safety, the promised scholarships that all these kids were promised and that have been eliminated. That is very important to him, and the House has passed revenue over to the Senate to be able to replace the revenues that were cut. But the Senate has not taken them up on it. They have stuck to their line of no revenues, never, never, never.
You know, I've read a lot of blogs and, commentaries, and there's been a lot of talk out there, especially with this whole budget crisis at the state level. Some people have suggested that what role, in fact, do this, the federal stimulus package plays into this?
Yeah, it's a great question, because here is the difficulty is if these cuts go through, and just for your viewers, this is Saturday, there is 1 week to make a difference in the legislature before these cuts take effect. So when the schools get notice that the cut's going to happen in 30 days, next week is the last week. So we need to make sure the legislature acts. But the stimulus money will be jeopardized if these cuts go into effect, because there is a certain threshold of spending that the state is required to keep. It's called a maintenance of effort that the federal act required, that if these cuts go through, because again the revenue to the school aid fund has dropped, then it will jeopardize the federal funding. And it means we've got to ask for a waiver, a permission from the Obama administration to go below what we promised we would go below. And that's why it's got to be fixed. Let me just say one other thing too. For folks who, just as sort of budgeting 101 from the state, the school aid fund is funded by the sales tax largely. And so when citizens aren't shopping because we're in a recession, understandably, that's why you see the revenues go through the floor, and that's what has been the problem. And I can't sign a budget that's out of balance, and we cannot proceed. Unlike the federal government, we're not allowed to go forward unless we have enough money to be able to justify the spending that's been authorized.
So we would not be threatened with a state shutdown?
No, we're not going to do a state shutdown. So I disagreed with this budget, but I did sign it because I do not want to shut the state down. I think the only thing worse than this lousy budget is a state shutdown. But we are going to mobilize people in a democracy. This is what we're asking for, is that these legislators work for citizens. And that's the greatest form of government there is. They're not going to listen to me because we have a philosophical difference. But will they listen to parents and superintendents and employers who want to see us invest in education, especially now during this historic time in this shift in our economy? I hope that we will make our voices loud and that people will listen to those in their district.
The question is, what is at stake here? Because given the economic recession that we're in, and a lot of people are writing the state off, and if education is going to be the first thing that will be removed off the table, I mean, clearly it blocks this notion of transformation,
yes,
that transformation.
Absolutely.
So what is at stake? What needs to happen? Because and it's interesting you mentioned students, parents, and so forth, because the question becomes, what role are these different groups playing in terms of sending this message out to Lansing in terms of what needs to be done?
Right. So on today when we're taping, I'm heading to Macomb County to meet with all of the superintendents in Macomb and some of them in Oakland County. What I want them to do is to mobilize their parents, their students, I mean the voices of that next generation, the voices of parents and grandparents. And frankly, even if you don't have a child, but you care about the future of Michigan, the states that have the most skilled workforce, the highest level of educational attainment, are the states that have the lowest unemployment rates. We're trying to add new sectors to our economy, things like robotics, advanced technology, Homeland Security and Defense, the efforts with alternative energy, they require a skilled workforce. These employers are not going to come here unless they see that we have made a commitment to education and that we're churning out workers that can take on the jobs of the 21st century. So it's hand in glove. Education is a longer term strategy. It's true for adults too, Bankole, getting people to come back to college and be trained in a specific area that's an emerging sector. But for these kids who are coming through, they only have 1 year in their grade, whatever grade they're in. We cannot turn back the clock on them and their ability to succeed. We're getting all these kids to take a college curriculum that's a college prep curriculum for in high school. We've upped the ante, the standards. We're asking them all to steer their eyes toward college. Our goal is to double the number of college graduates. This is going to take us all the way back. We cannot let this happen.
Now, I'm sure Mike Bishop would say, and he's welcome on this program as well, that we have to make tough choices.
We do.
To get to where we need to be. And what tough choices can you list out for our viewers? What tough choices do you think, ought to be made?
Yeah.
To,
Okay, so it is a tough choice to vote for revenue.
Right.
So I'm asking him to vote for these narrow targeted revenues. That's a tough choice. The tough choices on the cut side, believe me, and I know cuts. No governor in the history of Michigan has cut as much as I have. We are down to the levels in terms of the size of state government that we were in 1965. Then we've lost 11,000 employees in state government because of hiring freezes and early outs since 2002. Remember the Headley Amendment that was passed in Michigan? We're $9.4 billion below that limit. That was a limit for your viewers who are watching. It was a limit on spending. We're so far below that it's not even funny. We're 45th in the country in terms of number of state employees per citizen. So for those who want to see shrinking government and not having the taxpayers bear a big enough burden, they should say that this past decade has been a rousing success. But now, we cannot hurt and damage the economic future of Michigan as we transform it. If we damage education, we will be doing exactly that.
And your critics have said, well, the problem with Governor Granholm is that she's not been able to make tough choices. How do you respond to that?
I don't know how much tougher we can get.
She's not been able, she's not been able to use the bully pulpit.
Well, so here I am using the bully pulpit, but you can use the bully pulpit all you want. The problem is that you can't force people to do something that they don't want to do. I can't, but parents can, and constituents can, and those who hired these legislators, their voices should be heard. I can make all of the noise I want. Sometimes when I say something, my opponents go exactly in the opposite direction, but citizens are much more persuasive, and that's why we're asking them to mobilize.
And before we go on a break, I want to switch the pendulum to Detroit. We have a lot to talk about, of course, the future of the Democratic Party as well here in the state of Michigan. Quickly, the stimulus package in Detroit, the feeling out here is that, where is it? People are asking, we don't see it around. It's not that much translated into jobs. What's happening with the stimulus
Right, so
package?
a third of the stimulus packages, you probably are aware, were based on tax cuts. And so the earned income tax credit and specifically money that went to senior citizens in the form of a check and all of that. That's sort of a third of it. Another third went to making sure that we weren't laying off teachers, that we weren't hurting Medicaid. So there was something that went to services in addition to tax cuts. And then a third of it went to job creation, largely in the form of infrastructure and weatherization. The weatherization dollars were not really released until September. And so it's been slow. It's been slower because the federal government had to do some sort of bureaucratic definitions without getting into details. But the bottom line is you should start to see, at least on the weatherization, more jobs appearing. But it's clear that we have been hit harder than any other state because of the auto industry. And that's why we're really amping up, for example, No Worker Left Behind to allow people to be retrained for new jobs.
All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back on our final segment, we will talk about the future of the Democratic Party, the Detroit elections, and a lot more with Governor Jennifer Granholm.